Hiya! Welcome! So the day this video's been released on YouTube, I think it'll be the day after the Beatles Now and Then has premiered on streaming services, YouTube, etc. And there's like a little mini documentary to do with the new single that's out at some point before the 2nd of November. And the day this will be being released will be the day the physical single Now and Then should be getting into shops and maybe even being received by people such as myself who have ordered a copy of the single physically. I wanted to have a bit of a discussion, one-way discussion I suppose, about Now and Then and the fact that it's been heavily promoted as the last Beatles song, which I dare say it will be. We'll get into that. I've pre-ordered my copy of the single Now and Then, double A side with Love Me Do from the Beatles UK online store. It's out on many different formats. I'll flash them up on screen. I've pre-ordered the 7-inch store exclusive blue and white marbled edition, but there's many others. There's even a red HMV exclusive. I can't remember if that's 7-inch or 12-inch. I'd imagine 7. But if you can get it on 12-inch, there's a cassette single as well. As for the red and black album reissues that are due out, I think, the following week, I've not pre-ordered those yet. I'm still in two minds about it. I've got those albums when they were reissued on CD, I don't know, like 15 years ago or more. They do have additional tracks on, and supposedly 2023 mixes. And of course, Now and Then is the final track on the blue 1967 to 70 album. I did like the look of the box set, which had the vinyl editions, 3 LPs each of the red and blue albums, and the red was red vinyl, the blue was blue vinyl. When I looked yesterday, the day that the announcement was made when I'm recording this, it said sold out already, but then I looked again today and you could actually buy it, so I don't know what was happening there. I don't know, I'd normally tend to only collect Beatles on CD. I do have a vinyl box set of the singles, so it's quite nice that I'm getting Now and Then on vinyl as well. The cassette single, or the single, is perhaps a step too far really for me. But it's nice to get a 7-inch single. So the last Beatles song, Now and Then. Let me just read what it says on the Beatles website, and there'll be way more information available, and there'll be people on YouTube, Beatles experts. I'm coming at this from just the perspective of a kind of average fan, more than casual fan, because they've always been one of my favourite groups, and I've collected them for many years now. But I wouldn't say I'm an expert. There's certain other people on YouTube who might think they're an expert just because of the amount of different pressings that they own and the pontificating that they do, but I don't consider them really expert either. But there will be people out there who know an awful lot more than me. I just want to give my thoughts really on Now and Then, not so much the red and blue albums. But as for Now and Then, what it says on the website is, together and apart, the Beatles have always had a talent for the unexpected, and now 2023 brings one of the most anticipated releases of their long and endlessly eventful history. Now and Then is the last Beatles song, written and sung by John Lennon, developed and worked on by Paul McCartney, George Harrison and Ringo Starr, and now finally finished by Paul and Ringo over 4 decades later. And then it gives some information about the worldwide release online. It says the music video will debut today, November 3rd, the day this video is coming out. There's plenty more information to drill down on the site and elsewhere, but I want to talk about this notion of it being the last Beatles song. So Now and Then is a track, although I've not heard the official version, because as I'm sitting here now, hardly anyone has, but by the time this video comes out, I've no doubt heard it. But it is a song that I've known in semi-official, or I suppose unofficial forms, for quite a few years now. I've heard a couple of fan edits. In fact, I've got one as like a digital file on my phone that I've been listening to for years. That's a really good version. If the official 2023 Beatles canonical version of Now and Then sounds anywhere as good quality as the fan edit that I've been listening to all these years, then I'll be pretty pleased about it. It's a great song, first and foremost. I'll talk a little bit about the other songs that I think really should have been released. I mean, I think most Beatles fans are going to say, yeah, anything that's out there that's not been released in the last 60 years, you know, now's the time to put it out. Especially while we've still got two Beatles alive who can work on these things if need be. I mean, some of them I don't think even need work, and we'll get into that in a moment. But bear in mind that Lennon, Harrison no longer with us, as you know. Paul McCartney, he'll be 81 this year. He'll have turned 81 this year, I think, and Ringo's, I think, a couple of years older. So, you know, these are guys whose careers, at least, you know, to any full-time extent, must be winding down now. And I think maybe with Now and Then, it really will be the last Beatles song, because it's a case of now or never, really. But then that got me to thinking, well, why has it taken so long? Now and Then had been rumoured and talked about in Beatles fan circles for, well, from my experience, at least 27 years. I'm going back to like Anthology from 1995-96, and I suppose some really hardcore fans who collected bootlegs and, you know, new ins and outs and stuff would have talked about it even more, because it was originally a John Lennon demo in much the same way that the then incompleted Free as a Bird was, which was of course a #2 single here in the UK in December 95, and then Real Love, which was quite familiar to people as I think it featured on Imagine, the film Imagine. And then the Beatles reworking of that for Anthology 2 was released as a single a few months later. So why was there no single, and it would have likely have been Now and Then, to come out for Anthology 3, which was later on in 1996? Well, I will read some of the stuff I've got from Wikipedia here, but what I do know, without needing to refer to that, is at that point in the mid-90s, the Threetles, Harrison, Starr and McCartney, and they were working alongside George Martin to an extent, and of course Jeff Lynne as well for production on the reworked Free as a Bird and Real Love. They weren't happy with the quality of Lennon's demo, and same for another thing which I'll talk about in a moment. And apparently Paul McCartney had been talking about finally getting Now and Then finished since about 2021, because there was talk, and I don't know if it was McCartney who said it, and then he sort of wished, well, I probably shouldn't have said that because it's going to offend some audio files, but there was talk that like artificial intelligence was going to be used to help clean up, you know, the Lennon demo vocal that never sounded brilliant in the first place. Apparently, from what I've read, it's technology that was used by Peter Jackson for the Get Back documentary series, the Disney Plus series project, that has helped finish the track, and of course new additions, you know, music-wise, instrument-wise, from Ringo Starr and Macca. So let me have a bit of a read of Wikipedia to you and talk about some other final Beatles songs that I'm wondering, will we ever see them or hear them in official form? And if not, well, why not? Why didn't we get them like within the last couple of years or so? So there's one that I've never heard before, and I think it's like a real rarity, but it was one that was recorded back in the 60s called Carnival of Light, and it was actually an avant-garde piece. I think it was quite long, yeah, nearly 14 minutes long, and it was premiered at the Million Volt Light and Sound Rave that was held at the Roundhouse in London on the 28th of January and 4th of February 1967. So if you were there at the time, congratulations, you heard a Beatles track, or a Beatles piece, I don't know if you could call it a track as such, that has never been released. Apparently, according to Wikipedia here, Carnival of Light, which was recorded for this event during the Sgt. Pepper sessions, it was intended to be released on the Anthology 2 album, but it was vetoed by George Harrison, so George didn't like it. Then it talks about Now and Then, with it intending to anchor Anthology 3, and that would have been the third new Beatles single after Freeze a Bird and Real Love. But the poor fidelity and excessive ambient noise of the original tape proved too difficult to alleviate, and the song was abandoned. George Harrison called it fucking rubbish. And it was replaced as the opening track on Anthology 3 with an outtake from the White Album, A Beginning, which, if memory serves, was like a George Martin orchestral piece. In 2023, McCartney, Starr and Giles Martin refurbished and completed the track using artificial intelligence. So yeah, they are, at least Wikipedia anyway, which isn't obviously written by a Beatle or anyone to do with them, but they're on about using AI to extricate Lennon's vocal from the demo tape. So yeah, although it's been credited to like some technology that Peter Jackson has developed or used, it has got its roots in AI. Plan to release it as a final Beatles song, which is Today's the Day, or Yesterday Was the Day, and it's a bonus track on the expanded edition of the 1967-70 Blue album. So the other track that I want to talk about, and it's not mentioned in this article here, is Grow Old With Me, which is another Lennon demo. I think that's one that is quite well known, a bit like Real Love, where, you know, it was... here we go, I can actually get an article up about it. Yeah, Grow Old With Me is one of the final songs written by John Lennon. It was recorded as a demo while in Bermuda in 1980, so yeah, very late, obviously. It did appear on Milk and Honey, and it was considered as a possible reunion single by former bandmates during the making of Beatles Anthology. Grow Old With Me is like another one where I've heard a fan edit, and I've been listening to a fan edit digitally for quite a few years now, and I really like it. I think I've heard the original Lennon demo many years ago, and I wasn't overly impressed, but the kind of unofficial... This is meant to sound like the Beatles, even though it isn't. It's Lennon's demo with some anonymous musicians behind it, but it did sound like something that would have sounded right at home after Real Love, the 96 Real Love. I kind of wish they'd worked on it. I suppose if they haven't got as much of an affinity to Grow Old With Me as Now and Then, McCartney and Starr mainly I'm talking about, and I suppose Harrison too, when he was alive. Even so, that could have been a Beatles single, I suppose, a year ago, 2 years ago. Maybe it would, because of all the reissues and stuff. We've had a Revolver reissue. Was that last year? I think so. And then before that was Let It Be. And then Sgt. Pepper's, Abbey Road, White Album. All those have had reissues in recent years. And then this year we're getting the Red and Blue compilation albums getting added to and remastered, etc. So yeah, I think it's because it's mainly classed as kind of like more a John Lennon track than anything the Beatles really worked on to any great extent during the anthology sessions. Then I suppose I'm not surprised that they haven't bothered with Grow Old With Me. I think it's a bit of a shame. As for Carnival of Light, to get back to that, there again, it was an original thing that all four members apparently worked on, I think. In 1967, it was during the Pepper sessions, but I get more excited personally about, you know, something that's got elements of newness to it, like when Free as a Bird first came out, and you could hear McCartney's vocals, and it was obvious they were new vocals, recorded new. The only thing that was old on it was John Lennon's stuff, and it was just exciting to think about the Beatles functioning as a group, albeit three of them, in the early and mid-90s again. So, Grow Old With Me, I recommend people maybe look for a fan version of that on YouTube and what have you, but if you like the demo, then fair enough. Well, let me just go back, because there is, I think, one more track I want to mention as well. which really intrigues me, and this is like the sort of holy grail for me of Beatles songs, potential singles. And it says they worked on it in March 1995, so whether that was after Now and Then, I'm assuming so maybe they scrapped Now and Then and tried to write something brand new. I'm talking about a track called All for Love, and it says intended as a track on Anthology 3, McCartney, Harrison and Starr. It was a new composition, so it was the three of them, no John Lennon old demos or recordings, and no version of that song's ever reached the public. They just abandoned however far they'd got with it. I think that's a shame. Now, there'll be many Beatles fans who'll totally disagree with me there, because they'll say, well, the whole point of the anthology project and whatever may or may not have come since has been to incorporate, you know, the memory and the archival work of John Lennon, and now I suppose George Harrison as well, into a modern context where if you've got a track being credited to the Beatles but it's only McCartney, Harrison and Starr, whoever wrote it, recorded it, then is it really a Beatles song? Well, yeah, if it had been on Anthology 3, then it would have been a Beatles song, whether people wanted to believe that or not. Every band has like a classic lineup, and there's very, very few groups out there who don't change their membership for whatever reason. Like the one I think of who've kept the same members throughout their history have been Rammstein, and there's been 6 of them, and it's the same 6 who started out. But you know, think about the Beatles, you know, John, Paul, George and Ringo, that's obviously the classic lineup. That's a lineup that started having hits in 1962, but that wasn't the original lineup. You know, there was Stuart Sutcliffe, there was Pete Best, even Love Me Do, the first Parlophone single, didn't have Ringo on it. It was it Andy White who played drums, a session drummer on that, because for some reason George Martin wasn't fond of Ringo's drumming on that. I think Ringo might have played maracas or something like that, some sort of percussion on it. And there is a Ringo Starr version. I think there's a Pete Best take of Love Me Do as well. Love Me Do, of course, is getting a reissue as kind of the double A side to Now and Then in a 2023 remaster. But you know, you've heard Love Me Do once, even the different takes and mixes and stuff, you've kind of heard it before. It's Now and Then that I'm excited about. But All for Love, I'd have loved to have known what that's like, and I think, you know, now that they officially advertising Now and Then as the last Beatles song ever, then we're never going to hear All for Love. It's one that's, because it's been kept closely guarded, you know, probably numerous parts of it have been binned. I think it's a little bit of a shame, just as kind of like, oh, what would a brand new Beatles song that's not relying on an old Lennon demo, what would that be like? You know, disagree with me if you will, I respect that, but I think that would have been a fascinating thing to hear on Anthology 3, and obviously they've got none of the complaints that they had at the time over the demo tape quality of Now and Then and Grow Old With Me, where it was difficult to tidy up John Lennon's tape recorded voice. I mean, you could, if you listen to even Freeze a Bird and Real Love now, you know, they did the best they could with Lennon's vocals, but there's something a bit lo-fi about them. Freeze a Bird, not so much, because you do get that verse of the song that McCartney sings anyway as lead, and they use backing vocals and production tricks and whatever anyway. But with Real Love, that kind of does sound, and I love Real Love, by the way, I'm not slagging that or Freeze a Bird off, I love them both, but Real Love does sound like it's a John Lennon demo, and then it's got like the other 3 Beatles playing over it, and it sounds as good as it can do for the time, which was nearly 30 years ago. Carnival of Light, will we ever hear it? It's not, maybe they might get to release that at some point, because it's technically, although it's unreleased and unheard for 50 odd years, it's not technically a new Beatles track, so they could release that in some form at some point in the future, and not go back on what they're saying this year, today. about it being a final Beatles song, because it sounds like they don't need to work on that. Obviously, I'm imagining someone like Giles Martin would do some additional production, so maybe that'd happen. But knowing that it's like an avant-garde thing and probably very self-indulgent, I'm not too worried about never hearing Carnival of Light in my lifetime. But Grow Old With Me, I think that would have been nice to have got that released. That would have been good as like a double A side with Now and Then if they'd worked on them both. But like I said, Starr and McCartney, elderly gentlemen now. Perhaps they just wanted to work on the one track. They liked Now and Then better. As I said earlier, Grow Old With Me, it was more familiar to Lennon fans anyway than Now and Then. So they probably saw that like there was a bit of a mixed reaction all those years ago to Real Love, which was a familiar Lennon demo, whereas Free as a Bird wasn't so familiar, unless you're a real sort of John Lennon bootleg hunter type person. But I would have liked them to work on Grow Old With Me. But I think really, even though no one's heard it, well, you know, certain people in the inner circle would have heard it, but I think All for Love is like the real disappointment that it's not going to be released. I mean, Now and Then and Grow Old With Me, I'll still listen to the fan versions, the unofficial we're copying the Beatles kind of things, and I enjoy them, even though I know it's not proper Beatles music. It's just John Lennon's demos with session musicians, unknown musicians. But we're getting an official Now and Then, which I'll have heard by the time this video is released. And I'm sure, I'm hoping anyway, that I'll love just as much, if not more, than the versions I've been listening to, the unofficial ones, all these years. I think All for Love, it just intrigues me, and it'll intrigue me for years and years to come as to exactly what that was like. And it would have been nice for that to be resurrected from the pyre of the smouldering anthology sessions back in the early and mid-90s. But Now and Then, new Beatles single, promoting the Red and Blue compilation reissues. Great news nonetheless. It's kind of a new Beatles single after all this time, and I'm really pleased. And I'll be showing you my copy, the one I decided to get on 7-inch marble vinyl, in the next Records Roundup video, or an upcoming Records Roundup video. Right, so I think I've probably taken up enough of your time here today, but thank you for listening. If you're a Beatles fan, be it casually or hardcore or somewhere in the middle, which I think I am, then please let me know in the comments what you think. If you disagree with anything I've said, then I completely understand. Maybe my opinions on certain things relating to the Beatles here is a little bit controversial to some fans. But, you know, if we all had the same opinion, life would be pretty boring, wouldn't it? But let me know in the comments. We can have a discussion. We can have a conversation about it. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this sit-down discussion within the vinyl community here on YouTube. I want to say special thanks, as always, to my wonderful subscribers and my generous patrons. I won't bother going on about the description text box. I will just say my goodbyes now. Hope that if you've bought or downloaded or streamed Now and Then, the 2023 official completed edition that's coming out yesterday/today physically, I hope that you enjoy it. I hope that I enjoy it. And if you're buying the Red and Blue albums again, or for the first time when they get reissued next week, enjoy those too. I don't know if I'm going to get those yet, but maybe I'll have decided at some point in the next few days. I will see you next time, hopefully, for my next vinyl community and music discussion video. Cheers, everyone. See ya!